It's very cool when a Professor M introduces a Dr. M. So thank you so much for that introduction, sir. Dolores's work has also been very instrumental in shaping my research trajectory with the community in India. Here is a very special place to be for me because it's Caius, definitely, and I also had the privilege and the opportunity of meeting every single other panelist before I came up. It's either been at some research workshop or I've troubled them with questions for my own research, or it's been at the reunion where I met Uncle Evan. So this is why this place is special. As I share reflections, notes, and excerpts from my research interview with young people, I will be shifting between two positions. Okay? I'll be speaking to you as a young Anglo-Indian who was in the prime of her youth not so long ago. And I will also be speaking to you as a person that has been primed. Not so primed, but primed. As part of the panel, I was asked to respond to 3 questions which are in the booklet. So what I'll be doing is I'll be sharing an excerpt by a young Anglo-Indian, and from there I'll be offering some reflections on it. So the first one, is there a shared sense of ownership to the community among young Anglo-Indians? So while interviewing young Anglo-Indians as part of my MPhil research, one of them remarked to me and said, "It's only a few of us at youth meetings, mostly only the youth committee members." My next obvious question to them was, "Why is it like that?" And the person said something like this: "Because somebody needs to make them aware of it. I mean, you can just wake up and say that today you are going to work for the community. I don't think you can do that. I mean that there has to be an initial seed that has to be sown, then only the plant can grow." As someone who has been working for and with Caiis since 2013, let me tell you that Caiis planted that seed when they started 50 years ago. The writers of the Constitution had enough foresight to realize the need for young people to be involved not just as volunteers for society events or part of subcommittees, but in a decision-making capacity. And this aspect becomes very clear because if you look at the structure of the steering committee of Caiis, they have space in terms of the provision for a young person to be co-opted onto the steering committee as a youth coordinator if there isn't already a young person who has nominated themselves as a member of the steering committee. The practice and the effort to involve young people and their voices preceded the recent practices of youth meets and conventions that have gained a lot of momentum in the last 5 years. I'm wondering if other associations and organizations can follow a similar practice of making space for young people at the big table where the grown-ups and the seniors sit down. Because it's important to always ensure that youth have a shared sense of ownership and belonging. It's very easy to talk about young people in rooms when they are not there. Speak of how much they must shoulder the responsibility of taking the community forward without being accountable ourselves as adults. Identify them as groups and as subcommittees so that it checks off the need to have a youth representation, which shows that young people are very involved in community activities. I'll give you an example. So at the recent reunion in Cochin, there was the AGM of the International Federation, and after the discussions were over, there was somebody who got up and asked, or mentioned rather, this remark that there should be a position created specifically for a young person on the committee, the International Federation body. And when I heard that, I felt super excited because it would mean adding a young space there. But at the end of the day, I think before we put somebody at an international stage, we need to work like how Caius did from the ground up. Organizations that are part of the International Federation need to first and should put young people on their subcommittees, their committees first. Not subcommittees, not create another group, but put them at the big table where you have the rest of the adults sitting there and listen to what they have to say. Because believe me, they will tell you very hard truths, and you may not like to listen to them, but you need to if you are serious about talking about the future of the community. So as a community, we can't only call on the youth when it suits us. We need to plant a seed and nurture the plant if we want that seed to grow. In other words, the shared sense of ownership and belonging needs to be cultivated, it needs to be nurtured, it needs to be mentored. You have to give them time. The we as a community begins with you as a person. Coming to my second point, is there a gap in relating to being Anglo Indian in the present day context? I will share another excerpt from an interview with a young Anglo Indian. I'm letting you know it's a little hard hitting. See, we don't want someone who's in politics, okay, to secure our needs. He shouldn't be like this fighting for Anglo Indians. We don't need a freedom fighter. We just want someone like who will bring out exactly what an Anglo Indian is, even though it's written down in the constitution and everything, how it is defined as an Anglo Indian, but we just need someone who will, like you, explain everything to everyone, make someone understand, because there are still many people who have not understood what an Anglo Indian is, and they accept us as foreigners who shouldn't be here. Reflecting on this quote as a young Anglo Indian, it's very evident the history of our community for a young person, not just me, but a couple of others who I interacted with, is what is essentially passed down from nanas, dadas, mums, dads, their experiences and what they introduced us to. It's not a history that's been learned from history books, but stories shared with us, which give us a fair idea of how to correspond, how we should be as Anglo Indians. But it isn't enough to know how to respond to uncomfortable questions or explain our cultural identity to people. If not the stories from the family, then it's our own experiences when we have heard someone call us something unpleasant in school, or that teacher's remark which said, "You Anglo Indians don't study, you only know how to shake your backsides." It is also the stereotypes of the community created through actions of the previous generations that we have a difficulty of dealing with, or that we first have to break down to build up our own selves of being Anglo Indian. Anglo Indian schools are seedbeds, and initiatives need to be taken to sensitize young Anglo Indians about their culture, or others in the school about Anglo Indian culture. So there was another incident that happened at Cochin where we had a roundtable discussion on Anglo Indian education. And the mic was passed around and said, "What are your expectations from the panelists?" And out of the blue, I just asked, I said, "I just want to know whether any initiatives are being taken by Anglo-Indian schools to sensitize young people to their culture or others to Anglo-Indian culture, because the school is the most, I think, is the first place for many of us where we come to know of our identity, because we're made to fill in the diary slip, and I know that still happens. Maybe the young people here can tell me the diary slip of what community or what religion you belong to and things like that. And we don't know what to fill in that blank space. I didn't know what to fill in at some point. And so the first awareness of being an Anglo-Indian comes there. So that's why we need to kind of make an effort. So I asked the person, I said, "Any initiatives being taken for this?" And the discussion proceeded and everything went off well, people clapped, everything was over. I still didn't get an answer. And when after lunch, I was still not satisfied. I was a little gutsy. I took my lunch plate and I went up to a person and I said, "Hey, I asked a question in the beginning, I didn't get an answer." The person told me, "You're not going to get an answer because nothing's being done." Yes, we are the only community to be defined in the Indian constitution. We are the only community with the word India in our name. And young Anglo-Indian people, I think, best personify this by speaking vernacular languages, dressing at times in an atypical Anglo-Indian style. But are we as a community ready to accept that our mother tongue is not just English anymore? Our food includes much more than meatball curry and and yellow rice and extends to regional varieties. We enjoy a lot of appam and beef stew in Cochin. And we also need to support and care for persons who are born, young people who are born to Anglo-Indian mothers, and not exclude them just because the community traces a patrilineage. In other words, yes, there is a gap in knowing who we are and how we choose to self-identify or identify ourselves as Anglo-Indians. The next last question, if there's a gap, how do we bridge it? Brings me to an interesting quote on responsibility, again, said by a young person who I interviewed. Responsibility means if we want to blame, we can blame seniors. But that's not the thing. The youth also have to take on initiatives to adjust with seniors, maybe have to arrange something locally, not locally exactly, but where they are. We have not been given much opportunity to come together and interact. The thing is that we get together, some functions come, we get together, and then we're so happy. We celebrate, we talk to each other, but nothing beneficial about the community is talked or done after we go. We are scattered then to different parts, and we engage in our different affairs. Then the next function comes, everyone will come again, do some chit chat, and go. And that's how it goes on. In order to bridge this gap, in order to address questions of responsibility, I think we need to be, or rather we should be, more consistent in our efforts to stay connected with each other. Mr. Errol did mention that in his talk about creating an alumni uh, association or a group. Dr. Charles also did stress about it when he addressed also one of us. But what I want to add on to that is that we need to stay connected with each other across generations, across places, and across nationalities. We need to meet for chai, we need to meet for adda, and we need to have more conversations, not just wait for another 50th anniversary or a celebration of Christmas or Easter or Valentine's Day, but we need to meet more often just to talk. And also another important point which perhaps could help bridge is a mentoring program. If we could start something where we are able to mentor young people with a lot of patience, with a lot of time, and with a lot of care, I think it would make a difference. To the young people in this room, you are way more than what Article 366(2) defines you to be as an Anglo-Indian. Your Anglo-Indianness does not solely depend on what you choose to wear, eat, or the language you speak at home. It is much more than whether you can jive or do the line dance. I can't do either. You are more than your teacher's remark of being an Anglo-Indian in school or the names you've been called throughout your life. You determine what being Anglo-Indian is. You define what the future of the community will be. The we as a community always begins with you. Thank you.